Good morning. It's Tuesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th. And there's turmoil in Israel. Thousands of people demonstrated on the streets, carrying banners, carrying flags. They're demonstrating against Netanyahu and his government. Netanyahu and his government want to change the laws associated with the country of Israel. They're attempting to restrict the powers of the Supreme Court in Israel. And many of these protesters believe that these changes in the laws are not for the good of the country, but they're good for Netanyahu, who is under investigation for many crimes right now. Now, many may be too strong a word, but he's under investigation and he has yet to go to court and be tried on those events. And so many believe that this overhaul of the court is something that Netanyahu wants to accomplish so that he doesn't end up in jail. And many of his supporters are standing with him. Although the majority's voting were very close in taking action to restrict the Supreme Court. This is the largest protest outside Knesset in years, and it reflects the deep divisions over the plan. The proposed changes have triggered weeks of demonstration, and there have been protests from very influential business leaders and former military men, and even the President of the United States, Joe Biden, commented on this situation. So it's a worldwide reflection. And it's not reflecting good on the nation of Israel. And of course, as I know, and you all know, that anything that happens in Israel is usually taken badly by most of the world's population. For some reason, the smallest country in the world, or one of the smallest countries in the world, is looked upon as being evil. And yet, Israel has come to the defense of many nations. They are the first one there when there's catastrophe. And they have just invented a wonderful new automobile that runs on an engine that produces electricity and does not use any gasoline. What do you think that's going to do to the auto industry? But in any event, getting back to Netanyahu's problems, and what he's attempting to do in the state of Israel is far beyond what any normal president would do. It's a dictatorship he's attempting to establish. And Netanyahu personally has lashed out at the country's police and the prosecutors and the judges, complaining that he is the victim of a deep state-style conspiracy just to oust him. His critics say he is motivated by a personal grudge and his campaign will destroy Israel's democratic system of checks and balances. That's some pretty strong stuff on both sides. There are many in Israel who think he is not fit for office. Nevertheless, he won the election. And Netanyahu was lashed out at the country's police, the prosecutors, and the judges, saying he's a victim of a deep state-style conspiracy to oust him. His critics say he's motivated by a personal grudge, and his campaign will destroy Israel's democratic system of checks and balances. Anyhow, the legislation that was approved by committee would give Netanyahu's parliamentary majority the authority for appointing all of the country's judges. That's a step that critics say could pave the way for his trial to be dismissed. And a second change would take away the Supreme Court's authority to review the legality of major pieces of legislation, such as this is known as the basic laws. Now, can you imagine if our Supreme Court was removed or had their powers lessened? You know, when you look at some of the things that they have done in this country, we would gladly step forward and say, let's take that power away from the Supreme Court. But overall, we need to have a Supreme Court. Every nation needs to have a Supreme Court to manage the other courts to make sure that decisions are made based upon the law. Now, we have a problem in this country because our Constitution is the basic law, and this Supreme Court misinterprets it many times, or they have their own interpretation of sections of the law, such as the well-regulated militia means everybody can have a gun. We have our own problems with the Supreme Court, but you really need to have a Supreme Court. So the mere fact that Netanyahu's plan to reduce the power of the Supreme Court makes him unfit for office in my mind immediately. And on top of that, his coalition plans on passing another insane law that would give Parliament the power to overturn Supreme Court decisions that it dislikes. Can you imagine that? Can you think of it? Imagine what would happen in this country if the government had the power to overturn what the Supreme Court said. It'd be madness. What would be the purpose of having a Supreme Court? Why don't we just throw everything at the foot of Congress or at the foot of their Parliament? Why bother having a Supreme Court if you're going to be allowed to overturn the decisions? Is that not a form of insanity? That is really, really crazy. So when you look at all of these things, there's many reasons why the critics say that this country, Israel, the country that's a lone democracy in that little region of the world, would destroy its system of checks and balances and unleash a process that is similar to those in other dictator-like countries. Do we want to see Israel stoop to that level? Never. They have to stand strong. And Netanyahu is destroying this country as I look at it right now. If that's the thing, those are the things that he wants to accomplish. And I don't blame the people for being out there and demonstrating. But of course, their demonstration will be viewed by the rest of the world differently than many other nations' demonstrations. And even the president of Israel has tried to fight against Netanyahu's madness. But the president in Israel is nothing more than a figurehead. He has no power, really. So this is a situation that I think we have to watch carefully, because this is a little democracy that might disappear. And that would be a shanda. Pay attention to the news of what's happening in Israel. And it's a shame that they couldn't come up with somebody better than Netanyahu after 5 elections in 2 years. That's it for today. I'll see you in the morning. Bye.